I caught my fiancé with my sister 12 hours before we were supposed to walk down the aisle, and instead of calling the wedding off quietly, I made sure every single person in that church saw exactly who they both really were. My name is Dr. Evelyn Callahan. Evie to everyone who's ever trusted me with their life on an operating table. I'm 46 years old, and for the last 18 years I've been the chief anesthesiologist at St. Thomas Heart Hospital here in Nashville. People say I have ice in my veins when the monitors start screaming, because I can keep a heart beating when everything else is falling apart. I always thought that gift stopped at the OR doors. Turns out I was wrong. 12 hours before the wedding, I slipped away from the rehearsal dinner to pick up my mother's pearl necklace from the bridal suite. Grant had insisted we keep tradition, no seeing each other after midnight, so he was getting ready in the old vestry room with his groomsmen. I smiled to myself thinking how sweet that was. How lucky I was to finally marry a man who understood long shifts and canceled date nights and still looked at me like I hung the moon. I opened the vestry door without knocking. And there they were. Grant, my Grant, the man who'd kissed my forehead every single time I came home smelling like antiseptic and exhaustion. Had Lauren pressed against the antique sofa. My little cousin Lauren, the one I'd raised like a sister after her mama ran off. The one who'd been my maid of honor. Her maid of honor dress was bunched up around her waist, his tuxedo pants around his ankles, and the sound they were making wasn't something you can ever unhear. I stood frozen in the doorway, hand still on the knob. The way you freeze when a patient flatlines and you've got exactly 4 seconds to decide who lives. Grant saw me first. He didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. He just sighed, the same tired sigh he used when I had to miss another fundraiser, and said, "Evie, it's not emotional. It's just stress relief. You're always so intense. Tomorrow everything goes back to normal. I promise." Lauren turned her head, hair stuck to her lipstick, and gave me the smallest, cruelest smile I have ever seen on another human being. That was the moment the ice in my veins turned into something colder. Something surgical. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I reached into my clutch, pulled out my phone, and hit record. 12 seconds, that's all it took. I closed the door softly behind me, walked back to the bridal suite, and started planning the most important procedure of my life. I walked back into the bridal suite like nothing had happened, sat down in front of the vanity mirror, and looked myself dead in the eye. My hands didn't shake, not once. 18 years of putting people to sleep so surgeons could cut them open had taught me one thing: when the crisis hits, you don't feel, you catalog, you plan, you execute. I've always been the fixer in our family. When Mama's heart started failing 10 years ago, I was the one who sat by her bed every night, explaining ejection fractions and beta blockers in plain Tennessee English. When Lauren's own mama disappeared with some truck driver when she was 12, I was the one who moved her into my little apartment, taught her how to do laundry, and told her she was still loved. I paid for her pageants, her prom dress, her first car. I never asked for a thank you. I just wanted her to have the chances I never did growing up in a double wide on the wrong side of Charlotte Pike. Grant came into my life 4 years ago like a gift I never thought I deserved. He was the new chairman of the hospital board. Old Nashville money. The kind of man who could get a new cardiac wing funded with one phone call. But he never made me feel small. He'd wait outside the recovery room with coffee when I came out of a 12-hour transplant case. He told me my hands were magic. He said marrying me was the proudest thing the Whitaker name would ever do. I believed him. Looking back, the signs were everywhere, but I was too busy keeping other people's hearts beating to notice my own was bleeding out. Lauren had insisted on being my maid of honor even though she lived 3 hours away in Knoxville. She flew in every weekend for wedding planning, staying at the Whitaker estate because, as she loved to remind me, Grant said I'm family now. She'd hug him a little too long, laugh a little too loud at his jokes, rest her hand on his arm when she thought I wasn't looking. I told myself it was just Lauren being Lauren, dramatic, affectionate, desperate for attention the way she'd always been. Grant started working late, board meetings that ran past midnight, emergency budget sessions. He'd come home smelling like bourbon and that cloying gardenia perfume Lauren wore. I'd ask and he'd smile that easy smile and say, "Baby, you know how these old men are. They think a drink is a personality." I'd kiss him and tell myself I was lucky he had a friend like Travis on the board who understood hospital politics. I never once thought to ask why Lauren's car was in our driveway on a Tuesday night when Grant was supposedly in Memphis for a conference. But that was before I saw them together. That was before I understood that some people don't want to be saved. They just want to watch the person trying to save them burn. The morning of the wedding dawned perfect. The kind of crisp Tennessee spring day that makes you believe in fresh starts. 450 people were already filling the pews of the old Cathedral of the Incarnation. White roses flown in from Ecuador. String quartet from Atlanta. The Whitakers' name carved into every stained glass window their granddaddy had paid for in 1923. I put on the dress. $10,000 of French lace that Lauren had convinced me was elegant but not stuffy. I let them curl my hair the way Grant liked it, down and soft around my shoulders. I even let Mama clasp her pearl necklace around my throat, the one I'd gone to fetch the night before. I smiled in the mirror and felt nothing. The organ started. Daddy took my arm, eyes shining like he'd waited 46 years for this moment. The doors opened, 450 heads turned. Cameras flashed. I walked down that aisle slow and steady. The way I walk into an OR when the patient's pressure is tanking and everybody's looking at me to fix it. Grant was waiting at the altar, handsome as sin in his morning coat, smiling like the cat that ate the canary in the whole damn birdhouse. Lauren stood to his left in pale blush silk, one hand resting lightly on her stomach, just low enough that no one would notice yet. The bishop, old Dr. Rutledge, who'd baptized half of Nashville society, opened his prayer book and began. Dearly beloved? I waited. He got to the part everyone had been coached to stay quiet for. If any person can show just cause why these two may not lawfully be joined together, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. The church went still as death. I took one step forward, out of Daddy's arm, and turned to face the congregation. Actually, Bishop Rutledge, I can. You could have heard a veil drop. I reached into the little pocket sewn inside my wedding gown. Nobody had even noticed it, and pulled out the tiny remote I'd borrowed from the AV team the night before. I pressed play. The massive projector screen behind the altar, the one they'd set up for the photo slideshow during the reception, flickered to life. 12 seconds of high-definition video filled the sanctuary. Grant's bare back, Lauren's red nails digging into it, the unmistakable sound of the sofa creaking under them. Then my own voice, calm as a pre-op checklist. 12 hours ago, in the vestry room you're all about to take pictures in. The first scream came from Grant's mother, Vivian Whitaker, third row center, clutching her pearls so hard I thought she'd choke on them. Lauren went white as the communion wafers and took one step back, right into the floral arch. The whole thing swayed dangerously. Grant lunged toward me like he could snatch the remote away. I didn't move. I just looked at him the way I look at a resident who's about to make a fatal dosing error. Sit down, Grant, I said, soft enough that the microphone caught it anyway. The congregation deserves the full story. And then I told them every single detail I'd pieced together in the dark while the rest of the wedding party slept. How Lauren was 18 weeks pregnant. How the OB-GYN who'd done the ultrasound worked in my hospital and had quietly confirmed the dates when I asked. Professional courtesy between colleagues. How those dates lined up perfectly with the board retreat in Nashville last October. And the part that made Vivian Whitaker stand up and scream her son's name like he was 12 years old again. That Grant had done this before. 15 years ago, 2 weeks before his first wedding to Caroline Mayfield, Vivian had paid off the maid of honor to disappear and keep quiet. Same pattern, same cowardice. I finished with the line I'd practiced in the mirror at 4 a.m. I will not marry a man who thinks love is something you can schedule between boredom. And I will not let 450 people celebrate a lie. Then I turned to Lauren, who was shaking so hard her bouquet was shedding petals like blood. Congratulations on the baby, I said. I hope she has your eyes and his backbone. I slipped the ring off my finger, placed it on the altar beside the unity candles that would never be lit, and walked back down the aisle while the organist forgot what song came next. Daddy met me halfway, offered his arm again. Mama was already crying happy tears. Behind me, Vivian Whitaker's voice cut through the chaos like a scalpel. Grant Edward Whitaker, you are no longer welcome in my home or my will. Get out of this church before I have security drag you out in handcuffs. I didn't look back. I just kept walking, one measured step at a time. The same way I walk out of an OR after I've brought someone back from the edge. Except this time, the heart I saved was my own. The doors shut behind me with that heavy, final thud old churches save for funerals and weddings. Outside, the spring sunshine felt too bright, like the world hadn't gotten the memo that everything had just ended. I stood on the top step, still in the lace dress, veil fluttering in the breeze, and for the first time since I'd pressed record the night before, I let myself breathe. Daddy's arm was steady under mine. Mama reached up and unpinned the veil with trembling fingers, folded it like she was laying a flag, and tucked it into her purse. Then she hugged me so hard the pearls pressed into my collarbone. "Baby," she whispered against my hair, "I have never been prouder of you in my whole life." Behind us the cathedral doors flew open again. Grant stumbled out, tie gone, face red and splotchy, shouting my name like I was a dog that had slipped the leash. "Evie, wait, we can fix this. It's just cold feet. It's security." Two off-duty Nashville cops the Whitakers had hired for the day caught him by both arms before he got halfway down the steps. Vivian's voice carried clear as a church bell from inside. "Let him go, officers. He's no longer a member of this family." I didn't turn around. I just took Daddy's arm again and walked down the stone steps to the waiting Bentley the Whitakers had paid for. The driver, Mr. Leroy, who'd driven me to senior prom 30 years ago when his son was my date, opened the back door with tears in his eyes. "Miss Evie," he said, voice cracking, "where to?" "Home, Leroy," I told him, "my real one, on Granny White Pike." As we pulled away I saw Lauren in the rear-view mirror, barefoot on the cathedral steps, mascara running, screaming at Grant while photographers who'd been waiting for the happy couple exit snapped away like it was the Super Bowl. I rolled the window up and let Nashville swallow them both. That night, instead of a reception at Belle Meade Country Club, 450 guests ate the catered beef tenderloin and danced to the band anyway. Because Vivian Whitaker refused to waste $50,000 on food, she turned it into an impromptu celebration of truth and decent women. Raised $38,000 for the Children's Heart Ward in my name, and mailed me the check the next morning with a handwritten note. "Evelyn, I should have seen it sooner. I failed you, and I failed my son by raising him to believe money could cover shame. Consider this a start on making it right. With admiration and regret, Vivian." I cashed the check and put every penny into the new pediatric cardiac ICU wing. We named the family waiting room after my mama. Grant tried to call 112 times in the first week. I changed my number the day after the wedding and had the hospital switchboard block him for good measure. Lauren showed up at my house 3 weeks later, belly just starting to round under a tight designer dress, begging me to forgive her for the baby's sake. I closed the door in her face and mailed a certified letter the next day with the DNA results I'd quietly ordered from the cord blood kit she'd registered for. Lauren wasn't my cousin. She was my half-sister. Mama had taken her in when her real mother, my father's teenage fling, overdosed. And never told a soul to spare Lauren the stigma. I'd spent 34 years loving a sister who hated me for being the legitimate one. I enclosed a short note. "You wanted my life. Now you have my blood in your child too. Live with it." I signed it Dr. Evelyn Callahan, Chief of Anesthesiology, and for the first time in my life, the title felt like armor instead of a burden. A year slipped by the way good years do when you're too busy saving lives to count the days. The pediatric cardiac ICU wing opened on a soft October morning. Mama cut the ribbon with trembling hands while cameras flashed. The brass plaque by the door reads, "The Evelyn Callahan Family Waiting Room. Because some hearts are worth fighting for." I stood there in my white coat, hair now streaked with a little more silver, and felt something settle in my chest that wasn't pain anymore. It was peace. Grant lost his chairmanship 6 weeks after the wedding. The board couldn't have a man whose sex tape, however brief, was still circulating on private WhatsApp groups, running a hospital. Last I heard he'd moved to a condo in Gulf Shores and was selling boat insurance. Lauren kept the baby, named her Savannah Grace, and tried the single mom influencer route for about 5 minutes. When the sponsorships dried up and the comments turned brutal, she moved back to her mama's old trailer outside Clarksville. Some crowns rust faster than others. Vivian Whitaker shows up every Thanksgiving with a pecan pie and sits at my mama's table like she belongs there. She says grace now instead of just expecting it to be said for her. Funny how disgrace can make a person humble if they let it. I still work the long shifts. I still put people to sleep and wake them up again. Only now I make sure they wake up to second chances instead of second lies. And every time I walk past that waiting room, I think about the morning I walked out of the cathedral in a $10,000 dress I never wore again. I didn't lose a husband that day. I gained the truth. And the truth, turns out, is a far better life partner than any man who needs stress relief on the side. Some hearts are broken by betrayal. Some hearts are set free by it. Mine learned to beat stronger in the places it cracked. And if you're listening tonight and you're carrying the weight of someone else's cowardice, hear me clearly. You don't have to fix them. You don't have to forgive them. You just have to walk forward, one steady beat at a time, until the scar tissue is tougher than the old heart ever was. Because the best revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming the woman they could never handle in the first place. Thank you for sitting with me while I told this story. If it helped even one of you feel a little less alone, then every tear I didn't shed that day was worth it. Now, if you don't mind, tell me in the comments, what was the moment that made you stand up and cheer the loudest? I read every single one. And I always will. God bless you, and good night from Nashville.